morning. How we doing this morning, Cameroon? Oh, you're muted.
I am no longer muted.
Live is hard mode.
I'm doing pretty darn good this morning. I have a paid day off of work.
Nice.
Which is funny to me because Martin Luther King had some very specific things to say about going to work. So I kind of wonder how he'd feel if he knew so many people took the day off.
Well, let me be the first to wish you a very happy Robert E. Lee Day.
That is not at all where I thought you were going to go with that.
So, what's our topic this morning? We're going to talk about 3 of the top 5 Republicans in history and why they are ranked in the order that I have ranked them in. Dr. King is number 3, immediately beneath Donald Trump, and immediately there beneath Abraham Lincoln. And I'm actually cautious and somewhat reticent to place Lincoln at the top of that list. While it is true that Lincoln's work helped to free the slaves, the mythology of Lincoln is muddy. You go to a public school and the history teacher's going to teach you that Lincoln freed the slaves by signing the Emancipation Proclamation. That statement's not muddy or slightly exaggerated or bloviating. It's outright false. See, the Emancipation Proclamation, let's assume that nothing else was done toward the abolition of slavery. If the only thing that was ever done in the service of abolishing slavery was the Emancipation Proclamation, then as of the end of the Civil War and the reunification of the several states, the Emancipation Proclamation language would have no longer applied to any existing states because it explicitly only applied to, and I quote, those states in open rebellion. Which means that what Lincoln did is he decided that he was going to free all the slaves that he did not have the recognized legitimate authority to free. He freed no slaves within the United States. The Emancipation Proclamation only applied to those states which had seceded from the Union. So, of course, they ignored it because they didn't recognize his legitimate authority to rule, which is not a claim as to whether or not he still had a legitimate authority. But their argument was that by the act of secession, he had ceded that legitimate, or rather he had taken from him that legitimate authority as far as the Confederacy was concerned. Now, I'm not making an endorsement or a claim of the validity or any of that regarding the Civil War, just a mere statement of the relevant facts. Real quick, we've got Steve and we've got Ma. Good morning, Steve. Good morning, Ma. Love you, love you. I hope Ma started watching early enough to hear me make my grandmother's favorite joke, which was Happy Robert E. Lee Day. Because I think that's funny as hell. Anyway, so we put Lincoln at the top because while we're talking about civil rights activity, even though the Emancipation Proclamation was a purely political maneuver, a strategic wartime maneuver, and was not relevant to the actual activity of abolition, the fact of the matter is that the work Lincoln did around the ideas of abolition and being the first president of the modern Republican Party, that's pretty substantial. So he gets the number 1 billing as the top Republican. Donald Trump comes next. I can make a solid argument, and I'm just going to breeze over it here so that we can get to talking about Dr. King because today is MLK Day. Donald Trump gets next billing because in working to elevate the status and the quality of life and prosperity of every American, he had the additional tangential effect of that elevation happening to favor the black and minority communities even more aggressively. And there's a reason for that. There is systemic racism that exists in this country. But your Democrats and your SJWs won't point at it, because when they say systemic racism, what they mean is there's not enough systemic racism actively disadvantaging white people against others.
Well,
because
look,
what they want is more things like affirmative action, minimum wage laws, things like that. Affirmative action and minimum wage laws disadvantage the already disadvantaged. So what they do is they take away your ability to compete on price when you don't have skill to compete on. So in a competitive marketplace, you get a job, you get hired by making the argument, I am the better candidate, I am the more qualified employee, I will do a better job than this other guy who wants this job. But if you get rid of the minimum wage laws, I can go and say, hey, I don't know anything about this job, but I need a job. I'll do it for less than anybody for 6 months so I can learn how to do the job. And then you can pay me more once I'm worth more. Or if you don't want to pay me more once I'm worth more, let's say you're a tiny little small shop, small business owner, and you don't actually have the budget for anything but a cheap apprentice. Well, apprentice me. Give me the first bullet on my resume. That's worth more money than you could pay me if it means that I can now get my foot in the door as a legitimately competitive applicant to another job with a more competitive rate. But once you take away that ability to compete on price, you have hobbled people who don't have skills on which to compete. We saw this happen shortly after the civil rights movement. There was a wave of black-owned businesses that were doing quite well, and they had gotten to do quite well because before minimum wage laws, they had sold their labor cheap and used that as the foot in the door to go from being apprentices to master craftsmen. And then they would go and underbid white contractors in various areas. But then around the same time as things started to change there, and it got to where the pattern of blacks working at lower wages to establish themselves and earn those higher credentials and then go and underbid other contractors in competitive marketplaces, we got illegal immigration ramping up suddenly, and illegal Mexicans did the same thing. And now in a lot of those cases, what they did is they came in illegally, they worked off the books illegally, built a resume, then chased citizenships, then became the master operators in their craft field, and then started hiring more criminal aliens. But that whole sequence there dealt a huge blow to the advancement of black-owned businesses and black business development, especially in the skilled trades market. So that's so all that kind of ties together with why Donald Trump trumps MLK in the ranking for most important, best Republican. And then you look at what Martin Luther King did, and I will lay this. This is the thing that knocks him out of the running against Donald Trump, is quite frankly, Martin Luther King's motivations were racist, which is not to say that MLK himself was a racist, although it's likely to have been the case. But MLK's work was to the benefit of one ethnic group, right? His work was about elevating a particular ethnic group rather than evenly elevating everyone. Now, it's perfectly fair. And I don't have a problem with him doing that, but it is the fact of the matter. Now, as far as that goes, he was doing that work to benefit the ethnic group to which he belonged. And I am a huge supporter and a big fan of Ayn Randian style individual enlightened self-interest. And I think that when you look at the work of Dr. King, there is a great deal of enlightened self-interest there, which is to say that one cannot succeed drastically, one cannot succeed substantially without inadvertently and against all efforts to the contrary causing other people to rise up with you. The idea that a lifting boat, a rising tide lifts all ships, that's hardwired into the metaphysical mechanics of merely living. You cannot succeed substantially without causing other people to benefit from your work.
So I just wanted to go back and touch on that systemic racism thing for just a moment. I'm totally okay with eliminating laws from the books that disproportionately affect poor and or minority communities, like gun control, just as an example, and vice taxes in particular. Who do you think pays vice taxes? By and large. And yeah, the whole minimum wage thing. I watched a really fascinating documentary that Soul did, like 25, 30 years ago, where he went to Harlem and he talked to all these old business owners about how things used to be and how things were now. And it used to be that a lot of these black business owners actually considered it a duty to give as many young men as possible a job. And maybe you can only pay them a couple of bucks a day or whatever. But they were there at the barbershop sweeping floors as opposed to standing on corners getting in trouble. So it was twofold. Not only were you bringing these young men up, but you were keeping them out of trouble. So, sure, systemic racism, fine. Let's have that conversation. Let's eliminate all drug laws. Let's eliminate all gun control laws. Let's eliminate the minimum wage. But they don't ever want to have that conversation, do they?
No. And jobs like that, the kids sweeping up hair for $1 an hour or $2 an hour. And maybe $1 an hour or $2 an hour isn't enough today because inflation has murdered us with, 60% of all currency ever printed in the U.S. was printed in the last 9 months?
Yeah, that won't come back to bite us in the ass at all.
No. And Krista mentioned, there are declassified documents of Dr. King's extramarital affairs and orgies and all that. Yes. I'm not going to dig into any of that because, Donald Trump had sex with Stormy Daniels. Oh, turns out Stormy recanted that claim too. But anyway.
Yeah, but come on, man. we know what happened there.
I know. We've done that to death. Let's stick with this. You mentioned the kids sweeping up the hair in the barbershop. That's a great job for a kid. You're talking about a 14, 15-year-old kid, and he doesn't need to earn a living yet. But what he does need, what he has a substantial need for, is just enough pocket money to get a soda pop and go to the movies or something, and a bullet on a resume. You graduate high school, or God forbid, drop out of high school, and that's all assuming, God forbid, you're chained to that grotesque propaganda system known as the public education. But you find yourself out of school without ever having put a bullet on your resume that is not directly academic. It's not complicated. You are not worth minimum wage. $6 an hour is a lot to pay somebody who doesn't produce a profit-generating result. My mom just mentioned my nephew busses tables at a local restaurant in a tiny little community that I'm not going to mention because maybe there's a little skirting of the labor laws in this particular situation, but we're talking about a small, privately owned business that their entire business is the immediate local community, and my nephew busses tables there. I don't know what he's getting paid, and it's none of my business. But I know how old he is. I know how much he's probably capable of at this point. But I also know that he gets to put that on his resume now. He was a busboy. Which means that let's say I needed to hire somebody to just be a gear monkey, right? I take people to video shoots sometimes. Their only job, the only thing I expect them to do is take stuff out of the truck and move it to the position where I need it to be, and then pick it up and put it back. I don't even want them to unpack it because if they're not at that level yet, I don't want them to touch the expensive camera gear yet. But they could tote the indestructible Pelican case from point A to point B. That's easily worth $2 or $3 an hour for me, but I can't legally hire somebody at that rate. Now,
just real quick.
But you see where I'm going with that. So those jobs used to exist legally and above board. You could go and make $1 an hour, or it was 50 cents an hour back when it was a thing, to be an usher at the movie theater, and all you did was hold a flashlight and lead people to their seats so they didn't trip and die in the dark. We don't have that anymore because that job is not worth $7 an hour. And it sure as hell isn't worth $15 an hour.
No, it's not. and I actually think if we're going to talk about MLK, it's important to talk about the fact that he was not a perfect person. I'm a big believer in mental health. I'm one of those people that believes mental health should be every bit as normalized as going to the doctor, as going to the dentist, as going even to the chiropractor after you have a car crash. You can have wounds here just like you can have wounds here, all right? And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And one of the things about mental health that's very important, I've never seen that one before. Wow.
Oh, somebody's trying to sell me followers.
Thanks, I guess.
You know what? That gets the band hammer. Sorry, sweetheart. I appreciate your view, but you don't get to come out here and solicit on my stream.
But the one of the big tenets of mental health is viewing people as complete people. There's a certain thing to be said that there aren't good people and there aren't bad people. There are just people. Now, morally, I'm going to disagree with that. But as far as actual psychology works, that's an important concept to understand. Because the same things in Dr. King's personality that led him to march and boycott and give the I Have a Dream speech, those same pieces of his personality are also why he had the orgies. And you could make the argument both ways. You can't have the man that does the I Have a Dream speech unless you also have the man that would have the orgies. And you could do that in reverse. You can't have the man that would do the orgies unless you have the man that would be willing to make the I Have a Dream speech. Now, I get why we don't teach 8-year-olds about his infidelity. I do. But I think it's a travesty that we don't teach 15-year-olds about the infidelity. I think there's a lot that can be said about how any of us, all of us, can rise above the more negative aspects of our personality and actually do good things with our life. There's something inherently Taoist about it, where instead of saying, I am a stubborn person, and counting that as a negative, you take that same piece of your personality and say, I am a strong-willed person, and count it as a positive. It's all in how you use it. And turning people into, and you mentioned Lincoln. Lincoln had a whole bunch of dirty shit. Go look it up. Like, guy was still a politician and a lawyer at that before he was a politician.
And a vampire hunter.
I never saw that movie.
Oh, God, you must. It's fantastic. Okay, real quick. There is a scene in that movie where Lincoln is fighting a vampire in the middle of a horse stampede, and the vampire is throwing horses at him. Like, they go back and forth between falling on the ground and having to, like, elbow horses out of the way as they're fighting, to jumping up on top and running across the backs of the horses while throwing axes at each other. And then the vampire starts throwing horses at Lincoln, and he's cutting them in half with his axes. It's freaking awesome.
It sounds like Snakes on a Plane.
It is, exactly. I mean, if you went into Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter expecting it to be John Adams from the John Adams series, you're in the wrong movie. You go into Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter expecting a stovepipe hat and lots of beheadings. And some light political commentary on abolition and consumerism.
Now, anyhow, just to put a button on it and toss it back to you.
You've got the chat, right?
I see the chat, yes.
Okay, good.
And I see Steve's comment. Face it, young revolutionaries have sex. Add in charismatic, powerful speaker with a somewhat weak resistance, and there it is. Yes. Ironically, you could even make a similar case about Donald Trump, a man known to have affairs. Do we get the Donald Trump that actually brought North and South Korea together and discuss reunification if we don't also have the same man that's willing to have sex with Stormy Daniels? I mean, it's a complicated thing, but that doesn't make it an untrue thing. And I don't even think complicated is necessarily the right word. I think it's that whole look inward and outward, and Carl Jung and your shadow self and the archetypes and all of that all rolled into one.
And exactly what you're talking about, that double standard. Krista just commented, and this is brilliantly well put. Krista just commented, we're literally forced to judge him by the color of his skin instead of the content of his character.
Wow.
Yep.
Man. Krista wins the chat.
Well, which reminds me of a technical thing that I need to saw. Hey, Waller's here. What's up, my brother? Waller, I'm glad you started popping in from time to time. I hope you pop in more and more often. And yeah, I really appreciate you watching. It's been a hot minute. You need to, hit me up on Messenger or something. I'm not sure where you are anymore. If we're anywhere near each other, we need to get a beer. But I want to go back. Up the chat a bit before it gets away. My mother mentioned, damn it! And as soon as I said that, Steve had to back me up. My mom said in 1975, I made $2.64 an hour at Sears, and that was above minimum wage at the time. So Steve remembers when we built the Johnny Carinos up by what was then Discover Mills. I would, every day after work when we were doing that, I would drive home, and it was about an hour commute to get home for me. And I was usually ragged out and tired by the end of the day. And there's this gas station at almost the exact halfway point, and I would almost invariably be starting to doze off at the wheel by the time I got to that gas station, and knew that if I passed it, I needed to get up and move around a little bit, get a cup of coffee and a hit of something, a hit of protein or sugar. So I'd get out, stop at the gas station, get a cup of coffee and maybe a Snickers. Something, so I didn't fall asleep at the wheel on the way home. And this one day in particular, and this was early in the project, we were still doing the rough end, which means basically there's nothing there yet. It's just a flat piece of mud, and we're digging trenches to put pipes that are going to be under the foundation. So I'm nasty, I'm stinking, I'm covered in mud, my hair's all matted, and I'm just ragged out. And I stop at the little gas station, get a cup of coffee, a Snickers, and a pack of cigarettes. At the time, altogether, that was about $6.50. What is that, 15 today? But I stop and I get my little rack of goodies, and there's an old man in there. And he looks at me and says, "Boy, you look rough and tired. You look like you've been working all day." I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I have." what you been doing all day? I said, well, I'm an electrician, but we're on the rough end part of a project, so I've been digging ditches all day. Didn't even get to lay in pipe, really. I just been digging ditches all day. What do they pay you for that nowadays? So I normally wouldn't discuss my wages with a random stranger, but okay, whatever. I make about $15 an hour doing that right now. I think that's what it was, something like that. He said, "Good Lord, that kind of work. I think I'd make 25 cents a day when I was your age." And I just looked at it, I was like, "Yeah, but when you were my age, you could buy a pack of cigarettes and a soda pop for 25 cents." Right? So trying to compare numbers across time like that, you have to pay closer attention. Things have not gotten more expensive. Your money is worth less. Guess what happens when you raise minimum wage? Not only do you take that competitive advantage away from people that don't have skills on which to compete, but you increase the cost of their living because of the wealth that they do not yet own a portion. It has been further subdivided by artificial fiat to make the individual measurement units of the actual wealth smaller value measurements of that wealth.
Yeah, that's why turning lead into gold would be a terrible idea.
Yes. Yes. Steve says, remember digging the trenches at Jonesboro in frozen mud by truck headlights? Yeah. Yeah, I do.
But yeah, another one on your list, Ronald Reagan said that, I don't remember the exact quote, but it basically the best social program is a 40-hour-a-week job.
Yeah. Reagan is on my list in slot number 5, just below Thomas Sowell. And frankly, one of the reasons Thomas Sowell gets billing above Reagan, and I might even push him above MLK, is because Sowell was a Marine before he was a conservative genius. Hoorah, devil dog! Show that tax code who's boss.
But yeah, so I'm here on Martin Luther King Day, as I have the day off, even though MLK had very specific opinions about work, which is still odd to me. Consider,
well, you know, Reverend Jackson wouldn't want you out there on MLK's special day killing cockroaches.
Yeah, but consider, if you will, that we actually live in a country that has gotten to the point to where we elected a black president. And we didn't just elect a black president. Let's be real clear. We elected a mixed race bastard-born president. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as an absolute technical fact.
And he ran on socialism. He ran on the communist platform, and he still managed to win somehow in America.
So to suggest that somehow there's this big, huge racial undercurrent, is it there somewhat?
Oh, yeah. How about all that racist voter suppression that happened in the general election and ended up with the highest outcome ever by not we just had a few more people because of population growth, but no, we had such a high turnout that it's not just the question of whether or not the election was free and fair and whether or not there was fraud or anything. Guys, there are legitimate questions to ask about whether or not there are even that many registered voters in this country.
In the most free and fair election of all time.
There aren't, by the way.
Oh, and this stream just got pulled down. So, happy MLK Day. And guess what? You're the bad. Krista said something earlier up in the thread along the lines of, if you point this out or ask these questions, you're the racist. Yeah, that's kind of the problem. We can't have honest discussions because if you're honest, you're racist. You're just not allowed to be honest because, well, honesty's not good for the left. Never has been, never will be. It's why they've got to call it the Affordable Care Act, not the we're going to use this as a stepping stone for Universal Health Care Act. It's why they got to call it the Green New Deal instead of the we're going to cripple the fossil fuel industry act. I mean, and hell, it's not the left. Well, it's not the left that's exclusive to this. Like the Patriot Act. Yeah, we're not going to call that we're going to spy on everybody forever act. No. We're going to call it the Patriot Act. Yes.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that's about all I've got this morning. As far as the show goes, I got a little bit of housekeeping that I want to do before we sign off today. How about you, Cameroon? Do you have any final comments, thoughts on the topic?
Oh, I've got lots, but we're on a time constraint.
Oh no, go for it. What you got?
No, really, it's okay. That was more of a throwaway line.
So here's the other piece that I wanted to touch real quick. The ban hammers are coming for people. We've had a few videos removed on clearly partisan grounds. Our video about the nude celebrities begging people to vote for Biden got pulled down, even though literally thousands of other videos with the exact same topic, probably making the same tasteless boob jokes that I made. But we made the mistake of being conservative. We've had a couple of videos pulled down where we didn't even really question the legitimacy of the election. We had some where we talked about the legitimacy of the merit decisions on some of the particular cases. Some of those have been pulled down, not all of them. But we are victims of the ban hammer as well. And to fight that, we are now on. Come on, computer, give it to me. Here's a short list of the alternatives that we have a locals, brushfiremind.locals.com. We're on Rumble. We're on Minds.com. We're barely, but we're on Daily Motion. That's a work in progress. Of course, there's Facebook, Periscope, Twitch, Trovo, DLive, and that list is growing and growing and growing. Now, Trovo, DLive, Twitch, those are all gaming platforms where basically I'm putting content there just so that it is somewhere just in case. So if you don't see us, if all of a sudden we just disappear off of YouTube, go check those out. And for right now, brushfiremind.com. It's not very pretty. It needs some love. I need to work on it and polish it up a bit. But brushfiremind.com is a thing. And every day after we've gone live, the live show posts to brushfiremind.com. I'm working on the back end architecture so that we are hosting separately from YouTube the live stream itself on brushfiremind.com. So that you can watch it there, even if YouTube deletes the channel. Which I don't think we're in danger of having our channel deleted yet, but we're definitely a target for that kind of activity. So these are the precautions we're taking, and
yeah, check back in after noon on Wednesday.
Yeah, you mean after the false flags, And I think this might be our topic tomorrow. This might be the thing we talk about tomorrow. There are calls for armed protests at all 50 state capitals. Now, and at the inauguration itself.
Don't do it.
I'm not against armed protests. I'm actually a big supporter of armed protests. Actively practicing your First and Second Amendment rights together like that, I think is a beautiful thing. That's not what's happening here. Armed protests at all 50 state capitals. I will be shocked if there's not someone shot at each of the 50 state capitals. And that's not because armed conservatives are happy to pull a trigger and shoot somebody. No. The Democrats, the left, they are so dedicated to their tyranny, they're so dedicated to the stripping of your rights, that they are more than happy to martyr 50 of their own people just to craft a narrative. So at each of those 50 armed protests, I guarantee there will be some number of BLM activists and Antifa terrorists who have gone out of their way to dress themselves in Trump gear and show up with a weapon and murder someone precisely to feed the narrative. And it could be a standalone complex that is a result of the same 5th/6th generation warfare that we've discussed in the past, like what happened with what's-her-face at the IRS. Barack Obama never told Miss Lerner explicitly, hey, I want you to take all these applications for conservative groups looking for 501c3 status and shuffle them to the bottom of the pile. He didn't have to. He created an atmosphere of explaining that this is the thing that I want you to do. This is a thing that I would appreciate your doing. Right? And these people are dedicated to the proposition of obliterating the Constitution. That's not hyperbole. And I'm not referencing some far off crack. Right? This is a thing. The idea that we should abolish the Constitution has been discussed on NPR and other, it's been discussed mainstream. I had not intended to go quite this far down this rabbit hole, so I didn't pull any articles to support that. But if you doubt me, go debunk me. I wish you luck with that.
That's all well and good. I gotta go make breakfast for some kiddos anyway.
All right. Well then I can do this, and you can bugger off. So, it used to be, the way it was set up before, Cameron could not hang up the phone, couldn't hang up the Skype until we went off the air. You can hang up now, Cameron. I'll see you later. But now that we're set up like this, now all the stuff I had to do to fix the other problems, I can hang up on Cameron and not end the stream now. Yay! I didn't even expect to fix that. It just kind of happened by accident. But so back to it real quick. Armed protests at all 50 state capitals. Just don't. Because what you're doing is you're giving them the excuse they want. Right? 4 years of Donald Trump. What fell out of the narrative? We stopped having suicide bomber attacks. We stopped having love trucks. We didn't see a bunch of school shootings. There's a reason for that. Why waste all your false flags on an administration that will not let you use that narrative to chase more gun control? Now that the Democrats are in charge of the House and the Senate and about to be in charge of the White House as of Wednesday, you can guarantee a few things are about to happen. Schools are going to get shot up so they can go after the gun control narrative again. You're going to see more. You're going to start seeing terrorist attacks again. You're going to start seeing suicide bombers. Not just here in America, but around the world. So that Biden can have the excuse to ramp up military expeditionism and get us back into those wars that Trump all but got us out of, because that's the business that he's in. Right? We're not going to go get back into more wars because there are legitimate wars out there to be fought. I'm telling you, I've been there. There is not an enemy that is adequate. They're a substandard challenge. They're a low-quality people, and we don't need to be jumping on that shit. I guarantee you before the end of this year, you're going to see more school shootings. You're going to see more bombings. You're going to see things that happen so that they can craft the narrative that we need more gun control. We need more hostile foreign entanglement. We need more diplomatic foreign entanglement. And we need to sell more shit to China, sell them more land in the United States. It's all very, very predictable, and if you're surprised by it, you're not paying attention. So, make sure you go follow us on all the other platforms. I mean all of them. Even damn Twitter until they throw us off. Because at least I'm going to stick around on Twitter and Facebook and all of them. Just as much as we can grow an audience, let's do it. Let's get them in here. We'll see you soon, guys. Be safe out there, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. The outro's running a little slow.